Welcome, Helen, to my podcast. How are you?
Good. Thank you very much for inviting me to be on your podcast.
My
I'm
pleasure.
very excited.
Me too. We're going to try not to get too excited.
I'm going to keep breathing.
Yes, there will be some breathing and some pauses, and it's all good.
Yeah.
So my guest today is Helen Fisher. Helen is a spiritual teacher and energy intuitive. She lives in Cornwall in the UK by the sea with her husband and daughter, whom they unschool, and their dog, cats, gerbils, and chickens. Her focus is on supporting women with children, i.e. mothers, women caregivers, teachers, as well as children. Her first book is called Awaken to a New World, My Journey from Surrender to Sovereignty. And this is what we're going to talk about. So welcome, lovely to have you here. So I have read your book twice. And every time, it's like many books, every time we read a book, and especially spiritual books, we find different angles that we hadn't noticed before. We realized that we hadn't understood something before, and now we do, that kind of thing. And you have written quite a personal and deep story. What has been the most challenging part of the writing process?
So for me, it was facing my fears. There was a lot of fears that came up for me during this process. Fears around writing my story, because it was so personal, and really not knowing what the outcome was going to be of my story. I've frequently heard since that many people don't kind of share this sort of story while family members are around. But it felt the right time. So yeah, they were the challenges that I was willing to face.
You did.
And work through, as you are fully aware.
So, we did work through a few of them.
Yeah.
And then they keep coming up, don't they?
Because they do keep coming up. The other challenges were self-belief, and repeatedly looking at my sort of self-limiting beliefs, because they go deep. And also being okay to be with my vulnerability through those challenges, through that process, and really getting to know myself as a writer. So there was quite a few challenges for me to overcome, and also kind of structuring things as well.
So who is Helen the writer as opposed to Helen the spiritual teacher?
So that's a good question. I've not been asked that before. So Helen the writer, the way I would answer that then would be, the channel, to be in flow. So, which kind of runs through pretty much everything that I do.
Yeah, she's not that different from the spiritual teacher and the intuitive, is she?
No, and that's something that I've come to understand. So yeah.
Yeah. So let's go deep straight away, like straight in. Let's just dive in. About you talk about quite a few major surrenders in your book. I love the word surrender. We had so many sessions about all the S words: surrender, sovereignty, silence, and all these words. And surrender, I'm still not 100% on whether I'm doing it right, as it were. So tell us what surrender is, and where, and then tell us what daily surrender looks like too, because there were the major surrenders, and then that taught you that actually it has to be a daily surrender for you to be truly in your sovereignty.
Yeah. So like you say, and I share in the book, there were some major surrenders. And so when I talk about surrender, it's kind of, there's no end to it. It's a real experience. It's experiential. So it's not you're not thinking your way into a surrender. So for the major surrenders for me, I was very much, from my experience also with addiction, and I was what I call running the show from my thinking, from my programming, my conditioning, that thought it knew best all of the time. And in that way, for me, I was destroying myself, on very much on self-destruct. That's just my personal story. And so there were times where the big surrenders for me came when I knew if I continued the way I was, I wouldn't be sat here now enjoying this podcast with you, or had written the book. And so so those surrenders for me were very much a kind of falling to my knees, a kind of literally, I surrender. I have nothing. I am nothing. When we say the I am, that's when we really let in the I am. But at that point, I was stripped bare. I was nothing. I, was able to sort of, through that surrender my thinking, surrender my ego, surrender everything that I thought I knew of who I was and the life that I was living.
Does it feel like emptiness then? Do you empty yourself? But is it consciously? Do you go like, okay, well, I don't know, so I'm just like, I'm going to be empty?
I can do some stuff now, the surrenders where I consciously, and I did this quite recently as well. So in some of those previous experiences, it wasn't okay, I know, I'm just going to surrender now. Because that wasn't in my vocabulary before. It wasn't something that I actively thought about, but I knew something had to give in order to save my own life, really. And that's how it presented. And as soon as I gave myself to whatever you want to call it, for me, it was quite a divine experience. I literally gave myself. So the self being the illusion, the ego, the identity we think we are. And so, so that created then a moment of emptiness, a moment of serenity, of accessing creation. And it was like a dismantling. That's what I call it. It's a dismantling process. And so those were the big ones. But then the daily ones that I do now, bearing in mind there are a couple of days where I don't quite, I still can fall back into that, oh no, I've got this. But I do like to, on a morning, kind of do a little prayer. Prayer is something that I enjoy because it's sacred. And I surrender myself. I hand myself over, because very quickly my way of thinking can start running the show. I can start creating, think I know best. Again, here's how the day's going to go, this, that, and the other. But when I surrender, then I just allow in the flow. I allow myself to show up for me and for anyone else. And
So what comes in once you've emptied yourself, whether it is in the big surrender or the daily surrender? What comes in? Ideas? Silence? I don't know.
Silence in that moment, and a willingness to kind of be and be guided and be present. So, and the reason I say present is because certainly now, as we go through this huge transformation, which we'll talk about, but presence is key. Presence is where it's at. Presence is in the now. And so if you can be in the now, you can access, which we all have, higher intuitive guidance.
And that can be in the form of saying things to people, writing things down, journaling, thinking, ideas,
anything. anything.
Yeah, and you have to be
Anything.
open to that.
And be open to it, and because it allows you to expand your awareness, to be aware of things dropping in.
I know,
Where
it's
did
exciting when
that
it
come
happens.
from? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So now to the other end of the book subtitle, sovereignty. What is it? What is it? And what does it feel like? How do we know when we have reached a state of sovereignty?
So a state of sovereignty is, gosh, it's quite a big topic, this, but so sovereignty is self-governing. So little things around that, just from my own experience, is, where we look at where we are attached to things, the attachments we have to people, places, things. So it's been free of all of that, not reliant on people, places and things. It's been more self-reliant, sort of moving away from codependency. You're very much, it's freedom. It's ultimate freedom. And it's also freedom from the illusion of reality, the reality that most people are still kind of locked into.
Yes.
Yeah. And even when you have experiences of being sovereign, you can fall into that illusory world. So they're different dimensions that we can access, different levels of consciousness. But
are there different levels of sovereignty then, would you say?
I don't know, different levels of sovereignty.
Or maybe different variety of steps to get there, I suppose. It's like,
different
a little bit more
states of being. I'd say more states of being. It's all very much experiential. So I always say you can't think your way into sovereignty, because in that you can very much be in denial. You could think you're sovereign, but then take a closer look at, your sort of behaviors, the way that you're living your life. So you can convince yourself of being sovereign, but then there's another layer. That the mind is very, the ego is very, very cunning.
Very good.
But essentially it's self-governing, freedom from limiting beliefs,
So is it something you have to do every day as well? So by surrendering, you get to sovereignty.
Yeah, so it can be quite a quick process. It can get quicker. So,
and several times a day.
Yeah, so for me now, it's, I'm a bit of a surrender junkie. I have to say, purely because I will take my will back, so without me even realizing it. And actually through surrender, I'm guided as to what I'm actually here to be, to channel, to, ultimately my primary purpose, like everybody's, is to be present. That is your primary purpose. And so by surrendering, you access presence. And actually, at any given moment, you can surrender. And the last surrender for me, I will just share, was a couple of weeks ago, actually. And I was, in a state of, I was getting quite stressed. I had a lot on and I was taking it all on myself, and I was forgetting to ask, and just feeling really pressurized. And it got to a point where I was like, I'm done. And literally, I was driving home in the car, and I did it in the car. And I was like, okay, I'm getting tingly now as I'm talking about this. And I was like, okay, I fully surrender. Right now, I fully surrender. And literally by the time I got home, that entire day, I just dismantled, completely dismantled everything to go back into the unknown.
That's the freedom then.
That's the freedom, back into the unknown, and let it dismantle. It took me the entire day, And
So easy to forget.
it
Doesn't
is,
matter how many times you've told me, I forget.
yeah,
Presence.
yeah.
Mm. Oh, so why did you have to surrender so many times? Tell us a bit more about your story. It's in the book, of course, but just like, to tell us a little bit.
Because I'm quite a strong-willed character, and going from early childhood, like many of us, so I was not aware of it at the time, but I was very energetically sensitive, and I built up strategies in order for me to cope early on in my life. And so that is where, the ego self, the character that I'd become, started to be in charge of things. And I felt things very deeply. And so I found ways of covering that up. One, because I didn't understand, but I didn't feel kind of understood in some of the stuff that I was saying. And so I kind of grew up like that. And I had, like many of us, I had an upbringing that wasn't quite 100% stable. There were a lot of changes, and I experienced some trauma. And trauma doesn't have to be massive. It can be a series of events, and as a sensitive, you kind of hold on to them. And so I then found ways to cover that up, cover how I felt. So I didn't have to feel anymore. So, or I always wanted to change how I felt.
Because of?
It was too uncomfortable. What I felt was too uncomfortable for me to hold. So that started, through food, and then it went on to, to drink, to different substances. And actually, knowing what I know now, and this applies to many people, it can manifest in different ways. We can also look at how media, technology, there's a full range of things that we use to cover up how we feel, to change how we feel. And so for me, my journey, it became very self-destructive, to the point of, like I say, potentially many occasions I could have lost my life. And so surrenders had to happen.
It was like a little whisper, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Little whisper that you can do differently, and you have to, actually, because you knew from really early on what your role was going to be on this earth, and it's happening.
Yes, totally happening. Yeah. And that was the thing, is that added to, which many, you'll hear many people share this now, light workers, and that I felt I was here for something big happening on the planet. I just felt it. And I felt that I had something to do here. And I felt it in my gut for all my life, and it get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And when this big thing arrived, which we're in now, I knew it. Every cell in my body validated that.
You recognized it as well, because you could have just thought, oh, well, it's just a pandemic.
Yeah.
But no, you knew what it was.
Yeah.
What told you that you knew what it was?
I felt it in my cells, like everything, every part of me vibrated, like it was just, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. Because you don't know the details of what it's going to be. But I was very much aware anyway, years ago, talking about this time happening. And I remember talking about all systems collapsing. I talked about the children, and the consciousness that they access and how expanded they are. I did talk about, the loss that many of us will experience during this time. It was big. So I was aware of it.
Yeah.
And I
How
have
do you explain that 2020? In my experience, 2020 was actually not a bad year, but 2021 has been a whole lot deeper. Like got to the end of 2020 feeling like 2021 is like a whole other ball game. The word depth kept coming back to me. It's going to be deep. I didn't know what it meant, but it's going to be deep. Okay,
Yeah.
lo and behold, I changed my name.
Yeah.
Released all sense of old identity and all that, and that's, you say, is what's happening on a global level.
Yeah.
Is that what makes it a deeper year, a heavier year?
Yeah. And so when you talk about identity, when we look at the collective, the human collective, you know, and the identity as a collective that we've all known, there's the dismantling. So we go through our, you know, dismantling of our old identity individually, but we're going through it as a collective.
Mm.
So this is where we're birthing what we call the new world. But actually, we're birthing the new within us, our true identity, not an identity that, so in terms of when we look at the ego identity, you know, that's the bit that's dismantling. So therefore we allow in the new on all level.
The deeper identity, it feels to me like, again, is the deep word, the deeper,
yeah.
the truer, the truth. The
truth, the absolute truth. And so for me, you know, that's the thing that's come up for me a lot is speaking truth.
Mm.
So through spiritual teachings and the true reality. The true reality.
Mm.
Where we access
Can't
that.
wait for 2022. What's your prediction for that?
Buckle up.
Buckle up. No, you said that at the end of 2020 already. So I buckled up all right.
Buckle up again.
Oh no. I can't cope.
Yeah, you know, it's there's a lot of shadow aspects coming up more and more, you know, and yeah, we're dismantling and we're birthing. It's a rocky road, but it's a road that we can travel.
But we're going to reach a tipping point where there will be less dismantling and more rebuilding, right?
Absolutely, yeah. But I think what's important to really see here is that as we're seeing the dismantling, so the dismantling can present itself as the chaos, you know, the chaos inside of us, the chaos that we're seeing outside of us. But we're also seeing adjacent to that, the building of the new. So there's a lot of amazing things going on the planet. You know, people are creating new stuff all of the time. So it's happening adjacent to each other. Yeah. But we can easily slip into the doom and, you know, the heaviness of it, which is okay, and it's quite normal too as well, because we've got to experience every level. But remembering that through that there is a lot of fantastic stuff happening.
There is lightness as well.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, phew. So let's talk about the actual writing and editing and self-publishing process. What has been the best bit about that for you?
The best bit about the writing was that it was very cathartic for me. I didn't really know, you know, what the book was going to be. I just knew it was going to incorporate my story. So it was very cathartic and it was very healing for me too. And so as I did my healing, I was able to offer these words for other people to embark on their own healing. It was very revealing, sometimes quite uncomfortable. It allowed me to really connect. Connection is really big for me. So
connect with.
It allowed me to connect with my inner self, my truth, to the divine to come through. And as I was writing it, I could connect with the words, so I could connect with the reader. And it allowed me to actually feel.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really big thing as well, because given that I've spent most of my life numbing my feelings, during that year, I was very much in the feeling and being with the emotions and getting to understand what those emotions were. Yeah. And so that's what I got from the writing, and being in my flow. And it would just light me up to channel. That's what I was doing.
But what I found fascinating, and always find fascinating for me as well, because when you look back at what you have written, what you wrote 20 years ago, and it was already there.
Yeah.
And that to me is fascinating. It's like we already knew what we needed to say. We just didn't know how, or we didn't feel confident to, or we didn't think it was needed really. It was just for us. Or so when you look back, I remember when you're like, oh, I found this, I found that. Oh my God, it's all there.
Well, that was the thing, is like a lot of the things that I've written in there, you know, when I wrote about oneness 20 years ago and my experiences of that, it was just, no, that's a load of rubbish, you know. And also I used to write about the self, I used to write about the now, the moment, all of those things. But I would just kind of put it to one side.
You had forgotten that you had written that, right?
Yeah, it's funny because that particular bit about oneness, and also my experience with, you know, using mind-altering substances, and I always kept hold of that. And that's what I kind of filtered into the book for some reason. And I had an experience a long time ago where I felt that I would be speaking at some point about some things. And so it's all, you just don't know.
Look,
you just don't know at that time, but it all comes about eventually. So yeah.
Yes. So I have realized recently that you only get given teeny little pieces. And every time I got given a piece, especially this year, like I hadn't realized before, but this year, every time I got a piece, I was like, oh yeah, this is it. And then only like 2 weeks later to realize, oh, that's not it. And only a whole, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months later going, oh, that was a tiny piece. That was a tiny piece. That was a tiny, and now I can put it all together. Was that your experience as well for the book, for everything, maybe in your life, for everything you're doing now?
Yeah, and it's a constant now. It's kind of, you know, for us, it's like, I want to know now. I want to know it all now. And I want you to give me every single detail and exact instructions how and when to do it. You know, and the universe doesn't work like that. They do
why?
Like that.
Can you not change it for us?
Yeah. And so they give you get little snippets of it. And also, I think because we've been so used to living linear, you know, past, present, future, and actually the way we're living isn't that way. It's very much in the now. So you're accessing all of those aspects of what needs to come through and how you deliver it. And it literally is, you just show up, you know, because I was very much, and still can be, oh, well, I can't show up at this point because that's not quite ready yet. And it's like, that's me trying to control everything again. Oh, it has to be my way. Well, no, just, you're the channel. Show up.
Okay.
Show up.
Even if it's not complete, even if it doesn't make sense, even if 2 weeks later you say something else.
Yeah, because, you know, even if it's not complete, because when is anything ever complete? Is the universe complete? You know, and it's kind of, that's what we're embodying. It's never complete. It's complete. It's always expanding. And so just for me, kind of speaking and doing this is just to show up and allow myself to be that channel, to speak what needs to come through. Because if it's left to me, like Helen, the kind of has to be like this, then I probably haven't really got anything decent to say. But when I can open up and trust and just be the channel, the right words will come. And that's something that I'm practicing more so now. And that's the reason for the book, you know.
So why did, I mean, so this book, we can say, started 20 years ago.
Yeah,
Maybe even when, I mean, arguably when you were born, but
yeah,
and then evolved, that you thought initially would be this and then that, and then it evolved again. It's a bit like what we've just
yeah,
said. You got given little pieces of what it would be, and in the end you said, I know now why it took
yeah.
so long to
Yeah, it was
tell
very
you why.
frustrating at times. I was like, I know I have to write a book. But yeah, it's over 20 years ago, I said, I know I will write a book.
Mm.
And
So
all I
why
knew
now?
was that it would have to have a bit of my story in. So, and so the reason for it now is, one, because, you know, even from 2012, I was aware, obviously, the big global shift that was coming. And the reason it had to be written now, so obviously we started working together a little bit before 2020, just leading up to that.
6 months before, yeah.
Yeah. And then it was like, no, I have to write this book. I just have to write this book. And so I just have to start with something. And then as we got into March, and, you know, during 2020 and the pandemic, and that's when I was really writing it, and it was coming together. It was very much, it was, all I knew was, like, it had to be energetic. It had to be on a quantum level. It had to be about higher states of consciousness. And it had to be about awakening, because my story was about many experiences of awakening. And so that's how it then manifested as I was writing it. So from being, what, you know, in those moments of darkness, severe darkness, rock bottoms, to awakening through adversity, through painful experiences, you know. And that's why the book has to be now, because as a global, as a collective, that's what we're going through. Yeah.
So it will help people to understand what's going on and what to do about it for themselves and their own lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And because each person's going to experience, it's going to be a catalyst, many catalysts for people that will initiate an awakening for them. Yeah. And that is going to be more so now coming up.
Yes. And there is a journaling section at the end of each chapter. And this is why it is there as well. Do not skip that. If you read the book, when you read the book, do not skip the journaling questions. They're very deep, and they are there to help you understand what's going on and what else. What is it going to help them with?
So it helps. It can really trigger an experience in that moment. You know, so, you know, as we go through it, there's journaling questions around fear. So let's face it, you know, however awakened you are, you can still experience fear. So it's always good to revisit that. Am I in fear? Have I got a fear going on right now? Some of it's really big, some of it's little, you know. And then, you know, opportunities to really look at what your current reality is. You know, what are you creating, you know, from the state of mind that you're in, and what is actually true. So yeah, so there's many, you know, I can't think off the top of my head, but many on each chapter, many
questions. Yeah.
But it's definitely worth going into them. And my advice around that would be, you know, just spend a moment to go into the heart, breathe into the heart before you put pen to paper with those journals, because otherwise you're going to be stuck in the head and try and get the answers from there. But it needs to come from a different state of consciousness.
What happens when we drop into the heart and answer from the heart?
So within the heart, we open up the channel, an intuitive channel. So the brain is full of programs. It's quite busy up there, all the neural activity, you know, all sorts of conversations going on. So when we drop into the heart, we can really slow the nervous system down. And then we can ask the heart, the intelligence of the heart. And the beautiful thing is now that science have proven this, the intelligence of the heart. And so, that can be done by simply breathing into the heart, asking a question. It can be done through prayer. It's the same thing, intention. And just wait for the intuitive answer to come without trying to intercept it.
So that is how you recommend they answer the questions. Yes.
Yeah.
So how do you help people with all this, other than in your book?
So this has always been a difficult one to nail down for me because there's so many different ways. But currently now, I offer one-to-ones on Zoom, energy integration sessions or spiritual guidance sessions, and I also do remote energy sessions for women and children. And then we do a one-to-one via Zoom following that. I do energy sessions here at my home. And I'm also now beginning to do channeling sessions. So I'm about to just do one for a group as well, a small group. So I'm just kind of starting out with that because that's something that's been coming a long time, is make yourself available to channel. And so I'm doing that. And
so what would people need to think, oh, I need a channel guidance session? What would make them think I need a channel guidance sessions as opposed to different kind of session, heart math session maybe? Or
yes, so that was the other thing, I do heart math as well. So I'm a heart math coach, as you know, and I'm kind of using that in trauma and beginning to work with children with heart math as well. So what would make people think about a channeling session? So what I've found recently is that certainly now people have got questions about, what's actually occurring on the planet now. And actually, some of the questions that I've been asked is around the new earth and what that looks like. And I've been able to access sort of the new earth and the future timelines. And so when people ask me the questions, I can answer from higher guidance.
I need one of those.
So it has to come from higher.
Sure.
Yeah. And so I think intrigue, maybe.
Yeah.
I think hope. Certainly when people are in the thick of the chaos and looking for a little bit of hope, actually.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe also for their children.
Yes.
For their children, or for them to be, or on how to be with their children.
Yeah. And so that's a big one, and that's something that I really enjoy working with women with the children, because now there is a lot of uncertainty. There is fear around the children, and that's a big thing. I'm driven by the children. And how that looks in the future is very different. And it's kind of because the structures and the foundations that we've known before, in the way that we are with our children, as in parenting, as in schooling, all that is changing. It is changing. How that changes, we're beginning to see. There's different reasons for everyone. And so there's a lot of the lioness energy, which I do write about in the book, coming out for many mums now. And
yes, I feel it.
Yeah, it's huge. And so it's kind of offering assistance with that transition, that change, and knowing that actually it will be okay.
You're such a beautiful example of that. I feel like I was inspired by you, by what you said about unschooling and homeschooling and the way you are with your daughter. And my eldest is now online schooled, and I think it gave me the confidence that we can do something slightly different.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not unschool, it's not homeschool, it's online schools. It's kind of like the first step for us anyway. Maybe there'll be another step after that, who knows, but
yeah,
very grateful that we have this opportunity now thanks to the internet.
yeah. And there'll be more opportunities opening up, and it's kind of, you know, connecting in with your child, and really feeling what it is that they need.
Yeah,
Ultimately, they need they need us to be present.
yeah, and trusting what they say. It's really
And
so
trust what
hard.
they say, because they have access to so much,
Yes.
so much, and they are the children of the future, and they know they're here to create it.
Yeah.
And so it looks very different. So it's about us allowing for that to come through.
So much trust is needed there.
Yeah. And it's not easy. It's not being a breeze. And it's, you know, so that having the support there for helping other mums and women to go through this process and look at where we can provide, because it'll all be homeschooling in the future, pretty much. It looks very different. But where we can provide as communities as well, because everyone's got something to teach.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It struck me the other day that actually the schooling system is not that old compared to the, the rest of history and humanity. We never used to school children to put them somewhere else.
No.
And not see them all day long.
No, we didn't. We didn't.
Such a recent
phenomenon. And it doesn't mean to say they're not going to flourish. Of course, they're going to flourish if they're the right environment, the right community. We're kind of living in our truth and being present. It's not as easy as that all the time. No. But having the right support and network can help with that. Connection, yeah.
Community and connection.
Yeah.
So what are your plans for the next book?
So there is going to be another book. My feeling around it is, you'll probably come back to me in January, but my feeling was January that I might need to start something with it. It's around, like, I had a title originally, as you remember, Quantum Parenting for the New World, but that wasn't the first book, it would appear. So maybe that is going to be the second book. And it has to incorporate, conscious parenting, conscious everything, and, inclusivity. And that's kind of the feeling that I get at the moment.
It's the feeling you've had for
I've had a long time, and also I'm not sure if it's going to kind of work adjacent to me developing, which I've already put some notes down, a curriculum for children, because I would really love to work with children to help them really understand who they are as multidimensional beings.
That would be amazing.
And that's kind of what I'm trying to put together. And I think maybe the book will sort of come about with that. That's all I'm feeling. I don't know.
It's the little snippet that you get. That's all you're getting now.
No.
Come
so, yeah.
on.
I know.
Oh, well, I can't wait to read the second book myself, quite frankly.
Yeah. Well, I'll be interested to see what comes through.
Yeah. Yes. Because so much came through already. At the start of writing your first book, so much was coming through for that book. So you might not even have to write that much if you go back to the early days of the first book.
Yeah. I'm kind of feeling it now as I'm sat. Like, okay, tell me.
We want more, universe.
Yeah.
So is it a matter of the universe will only give you what you can cope with right now anyway?
Yes. Yeah. So my experiences of that, of when you get the downloads, is then, so when we open up to the energetics and get the downloads, we've then got to filter it through down to this realm, the physical, the manifest, the manifestation, which can take a little bit of time. And it's important to remember that, because I would have a tendency, like many, okay, I've got the download. Okay, I've got to do it now. I've got to do it now. And actually, it becomes really, really difficult and really challenging. Because we're at such a slower rate down here in this physical world. Yeah.
I get very excited. I go, oh, this is the thing. And then I spend a lot of time putting it together. So it's not necessarily challenging me. It takes time.
It takes time.
If we accept that time is a concept, which, you know, I think it is in this realm anyway.
Yeah.
And then, a few weeks later, it's like, oh, but that was not the thing. So you've wasted all this time. So it is worth waiting for the next snippets, isn't it?
Yeah. And kind of, and like you use the word snippets there, it's not the whole thing, it's snippets. Oh, okay, here's that going to come in here now. Okay, I'm going to use that here now. You know,
fascinating. Yeah. It's just fascinating. It's frustrating, but fascinating at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh, that is amazing. That has been amazing, Helen. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great. It's great to be able to just open up and just
talk about your book, and then we'll see you on stage soon then, won't we?
Just hide. I don't mind speaking.
You don't know where. Maybe you will be given that snippet later.
Yeah, I just have to trust and show.
For now, it's the Writing Room podcast.
Yes. So and you know, I kind of want to say a big thank you to you as well, because through that, you know, writing process, and anybody that's watching this or listening to this and thinking of writing a book, here's your lady. Because you know, I couldn't have done it without you, you know, and yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Support.
You would have done it eventually.
I know, but you know, I needed that assistance to overcome a lot of the blocks, and
you did. You did. So how can people find you?
So you can find me on Instagram currently, and I have a website which needs reviewing, but you can get me via the website, and on Telegram. So I've just kind of set up on Telegram, which I will be using more, and I do have a channel on there as well, which I'm just developing now, which I just share sort of spiritual teachings, anything that's uplifting. It's all about, you know, the vibration of love. So if you want a channel that's got fear, you need to find another channel. You know, this is just to sort of support and uplifting energy through these transitional times.
Yes, you're always helpful and uplifting for sure in everything you do, because I've worked with you, so I can, you know, I'm not just like asking all these questions out of thin air, because I've worked through them as well. And you see, I still have questions because I'm only given snippets, and because it is a process and we don't get perfect at it forever, and we don't get very good at it very quickly either. It is a practice. I'm certainly better than I was early January this year. So thank you for your help and support.
It's a pleasure.
It's been amazing. And as a parting present for our listeners, what is your best writing tip?
My best writing tip is to do the opposite of what your head's saying. So literally sit at your desk or wherever with your computer or laptop, if that's what you use, or pen and paper, and just write some words, because it will start to flow then. And I continuously tell myself that as I'm saying this too. And I know this is something that you sort of say as well. But that would be the tip. Because your head will come up with all sorts of reasons not to do it. There's always something else to do. And actually, if you just start putting a few words down, things will start to flow.
They really do.
They will start to flow.
Yeah, I love that tip. Do the opposite of what your mind tells you to do.
Do the opposite of what your head. If your head's anything like mine, it comes up with all sorts of
That's not the right time, got better things to do, other things.
Oh yeah.
This crap anyway. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
I'm not in the mood.
Yeah. It has to be this setting. Oh no, it's not quite right.
Yeah.
You know.
I don't have the right candle. Oh, never mind. I'm gonna write.
Yeah. Very much so.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, Helen. I will, I look forward to having you again on the podcast for your second book.
Yeah, I'd love that. Love that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.